What's good, YouTube? It's me, everybody, Squiddy, back in another Squiddy. Previously, we kind of praised over this card that's coming out in Eggoff, Berphomet, the Phantom Beast Dark Ruler, who says you can fusion summon this using 2 Fiend, Beast, and or Illusion monsters with different types. Now, when he's fusion summoned is when this card becomes chaotic, because he says you can send 1 Fiend, Beast, or Illusion type directly from your deck to your graveyard. So he can Foolish Burial any Beast, Fiend, or Illusion without any drawback. No levels, no nothing. Just straight up clean Foolish Burial from your deck to the grave. No drawbacks. And then he has the other effect where you can banish him from the graveyard to target one of your banished Fiend, Beast, or Illusion monsters. Typically, you would target the Chimera, the Flying Mythical Beast, to bring that back and have like a loop, because that one can be banished from the graveyard. But more importantly, I found some more targets for this card, and some of you guys left some comments in the previous video as well, so shout out to you guys for leaving those comments about these cards that we can actually Foolish Burial and have some value. And I'm so glad that we were able to kind of look through all these cards together, because there are some broken ones. So let's dive in this video and talk about what the heck this card actually has to offer. And at the beginning, we actually have a really cool beast card that was playable in Shaddolls back in the day. PEROPERO Cerberus. This card says if you take battle damage or an opponent's card effect damages you while this card is in the graveyard, you can banish this card, then target a card on the field and destroy it. So it's really, really neat. Omni removal for anything as long as you take damage from battle, so you can crash your own monster, take some damage, and then you can banish this to pop any card on the field, including powerful floodgates like Skill Drain or, you know, Ghost Match, whatever the heck is keeping your deck at bay. This is a side option for sure, and the fact that he's a beast means we can actually use him to fuse either into Berphomet or into Chimera with another Fiend monster, so this is definitely something that we can side deck against a format that has a lot of floodgates or problematic one-of cards that we just have to remove. Next is, we actually have a lot of cards, so we do have to go fast, but next is the Horus cards. DUAMUTEF, the Blessing of Horus, happens to be a beast monster, so that means we can actually send him directly from our deck to the graveyard. So if you are playing some kind of Horus engine in this Chimera deck, we can actually send him and then bring him back without having to discard using Pharaonic Sarcophagus. So that just makes the card a little bit better and has some synergy that way. I think it's really, really cool that it does have some crossover there. Next, let's talk about another beast card that you can definitely splash into the deck, and that's Behemoth, the King of 100 Battles. This card says if this card is normal or special summoned, you can actually target a beast warrior, or a winged beast in your graveyard, add it to your hand, and if you do, this card loses 700 attack. So it's kind of neat that you can actually recycle a lot of your beasts, or potentially even wing beasts. If you are playing hand traps like DD you can actually add these back to your hand. So it's just a really, really cool, neat little trick that you can do there with the Behemoth himself by sending him off of Berphomet, then resurrecting him with the Chimera from your grave. Really, really cool there. Next, let's talk about another Fiend. Is actually Nefarious, Archfiend, Eater of Nefariousness. This card says once per turn during your opponent's end phase, if this card is in your graveyard, you can target a monster you control, destroy it, and if you do, special summon this card. So not necessarily a game-breaking effect by any means, but it does have the option where you can actually recur him as a level 4 body in the end phase, so that means you can actually overlay into a rank 4 on the following turn, whether that's something like a Dugaris or like a Baguska for whatever reason, there's the option there. Heraldic Beasts actually do have a searcher called Heraldic Beast Leo that says when this card is sent to the graveyard, add 1 Heraldic Beast monster directly from your deck to your hand, except Heraldic Beast Leo. So whether or not Heraldic Beasts have anything that's worth playing in modern day Yu-Gi-Oh! Probably not, but hey, it's an option I wanted to add in this video so you guys can explore and determine that for yourself. We actually have a really, really troll card called NECO King. For those of you guys that play during Tier Limits Tier 0 format, some people are actually trolling people with this card, because this card says during your opponent's turn, when this card in your possession is sent to your graveyard by an opponent's card effect, it becomes the end phase of the turn. So you can actually dump this off of Berphomet, and then while he's chilling there in the graveyard alongside Chimera, your opponent effectively cannot play any monster board wipes or cards like Zeus, because you could just chain the effect of Chimera to bring back NECO King, and then boom, it gets wiped off the table. It becomes the end of your opponent's turn instantly. So it's kind of cool that you can kind of troll your opponent like that. Unfortunately, this setup does telegraph that you're going for this play, because you do have to Foolish the NECO King directly. It'd be so awesome if you could somehow do this by surprise, but unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, there's no way to do it. It's just something I want to mention to you guys if you want to troll your opponent. Now, this next one's a bit of a troll card as well, but it's actually Goblin of Greed. And yes, I know that we're getting Goblin support in the upcoming OCG expansion, but this Goblin is a different entity of himself because he says while he's face up on the board, neither player can activate an effect by discarding from their hand. So this means exclusively for costs. So anything that would discard from hand for a cost, you cannot do. This is really awesome because it means that hand traps are basically null and void. So anytime an opponent tries to Ash Blossom, well, they're not going to be able to, as well as all the rest of the discarding hand traps like Veiler, so on and so forth. It's just kind of cool. That also turns off KOA'KI as well, so that's just something to note potentially in the mirror match. And of course, the Horus cards. M-SETI is a card that says you have to send itself to the graveyard with another card to draw a card and add for an sarcophagus, and he stops that completely in his tracks. Whether he's worth running, Goblin agreed, probably not, but hey, it's a troll card that I thought about, and maybe you guys can think of a reason to do it if you want to stop hand traps for whatever reason. There are also our favorite fiends in Unchained Soul of SHARVARA, which allows you to set directly an Unchained card, so there's some kind of glue to tie together that archetype potentially, as well as SHYAMA if you choose to go that route. These are fiends that you can foolish directly from your deck and gain value out of, so that's just something to note off the top of the table. There are also Evil Eye fiends that have effects in the graveyard. Basilitrice, a familiar of the Evil Eye, says if you control an Evil Eye monster and this card is in your graveyard or hand, quick effect, you can special summon it but banish it when it leaves the field, and then during your opponent's turn, you can immediately after this card resolves, link summon an Evil Eye link monster using monsters you control. So if you have a way to play Evil Eye Engine in this deck, you could send Basilitrice and then have that back for interruption during your opponent's turn to link off directly. There's a pseudo Dark World card called Diabolica, the Draconique General, and she says if this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can target a fiend monster in your graveyard except itself, add it to your hand. So this is especially useful for things like, well, I could think of Skullmeister as a card that you might want to recycle if you're already running this hand trap and you have it ditched it already into your graveyard on turn 1. You can use Diabolica to add back the hand trap. So it's just kind of cool that you can recycle cards with her. And while she's in the graveyard, she's just chilling there. Just really cool. She can be special summoned from the graveyard as well if a fiend monster is sent to your graveyard by a card effect. So consecutive Berfomet activations will allow herself to bring herself back as a level 8 fiend fusion material or link XYZ, so on and so forth. Soul Scissors is another one that's a fiend, and it says if a monster you on the field is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to graveyard, that includes your own monsters or your opponent's, you can special this card but banish it when it leaves the table. If this card is special from the grave, you can target one monster your opponent controls, destroy it. So if we're sending this to the graveyard with Berfomet, we can bring back the Chimera to actually pop a monster your opponent controls during their turn by using the effect. So it's a really neat interaction there as well. There's some other obscure ones like Emperor TANUKI'S Traitor Count, which says, while this card is face up on the field, when you ritual summon, you can also send one monster from your extra deck to the graveyard as one of the monsters used for the ritual summon. So if there's ever in table 500 or wherever the heck is going that you would want to mix this together with the ritual cards, Chimera ritual deck, then definitely could potentially consider this because you can bring this back on your opponent's turn and then during their turn somehow ritual summon while using monsters from your extra deck, which is always a busted mechanic. The Labyrinth cards, of course, STOVIE, TORBIE, as well as CHANDRAGLIER are fiends that we can send as well. So if there's some kind of Labyrinth abomination of a deck, then the Labyrinth cards could be sent and then they can add themselves back to the hand when we do remove a monster by trap effect. So it's just like a way to search them as well. And other archetypes do have the Goldenhair, the newest Plunder Patrol, which is a fiend as well that activates in the graveyard by discarding a card, and she just brings herself back as a Plunder Patrol. It does lock you, I believe, into Plunder Patrol monsters, but it's just something cool that you can actually play Plunder Patrol Chimera potentially as an option. Just troll cards there. Next is actually Evil Hero Sinister NECROM. This card says you can banish itself from the graveyard to special summon an Evil Hero monster from your deck or hand, except itself. And I don't know if there are any good Evil Hero monsters out there, but for all the Evil Hero fans, there's now a way to Foolish Burial the NECROM and directly special summon out an Evil Hero from our deck directly. So there could be potentially some implication there. I actually know that DPE can be made using level 6 or higher hero monsters, so that technically summons out a material for DPE, although you would have to have another Destiny Hero monster as the other piece, but this is just like a cool little interaction there. Potentially you could mix it with something like a fusion substitute to make a DPE, right? That's just something I could think of. Chaos Betrayer is another cool one. If it's in the graveyard, you can banish the light and the dark monster except Chaos Betrayer to special summon it back. And then when he's special summoned, you can target a card in your opponent's graveyard, banish it. So if you use it with Chimera to bring him back on the opponent's turn, we can actually banish a card that's in our opponent's graveyard. Kind of underwhelming, but you know, you get the gist of what I'm saying. Token Collector is another pseudo Flood Out Game monster that says, Tokens cannot be summoned while he's on the field, and when he's special summoned, you destroy as many tokens on the field as possible. So if you really hate Sword Soul, you could splash in Token Collector, Foolish Burial him, and then boom, you have a hand trap in the graveyard, plus you could potentially revive it off of the Chimera, meaning that no tokens can be summoned, period. So against Adventure, this could also work as well. This could be a valid card that the Chimera deck does decide going forward. Somebody mentioned this on one of the video comments, so shout out to that dude the Squidling, who mentioned Holding Arms. This is a card that says, if this card is normal summon or special summon, target a face-up monster your opponent controls. While this card's face-up on the field, that monster cannot attack. Also, the effects are negated. So you can bring this back as a pseudo giant hand-like effect to negate a monster effect. And there's also Holding Legs, which says, if this card is summoned, return all set spell and trap cards on the field to the hand. So it's a lot like Visor Shock, but this is better because you can actually normal summon it as level 4. That says you can actually banish this card from your graveyard as well. Target a set spell or trap card your opponent controls. It cannot be activated until the end of the turn, so you do have some follow-up while he's in the graveyard. I think these cards are definitely valid to consider. DD Necro Slime is another fiend that you can foolish. So if you're playing DD Chimera, maybe that's a deck, you can banish this from your graveyard to actually fusion summon a DDD fusion monster. So that's just something we can consider as well. Infernoid Decatron, we can never forget that Decatron is actually a fiend here, so we can actually foolish him alongside the other Infernoids. But Decatron is especially neat because you can actually special summon this back with your effective Chimera and then foolish in Infernoid, and he's also a tuner. I don't really know how you would take advantage of this, but this is an option as well, potentially splashing in a Chimera engine into Infernoid. Absolute King Backjack is one that you can summon and then excavate top 3 cards of your deck and set a normal trap. So if you play a lot of traps that are normal traps like D-Barrier, you could definitely dig for that as well. Skarm is a regular fiend that you could also send. In the end phase, you can actually search your deck for a level 3 Dark Fiend monster. I don't think there are any good hand traps of that nature, but eventually we might get a hand trap that you can search, so this could be a valid card to send. KOA'KI Meru Doom is actually a really cool card that can actually be special summoned, and he says, while he's face up on the field, negate the effects of light and dark monsters that activate during the main phase. So he's effectively a pseudo floodgate as well, and negates all the effects of dark and light anywhere, not just on the field, in the hand, in the graveyard, in the, wherever the heck it would activate. It's just really, really neat. So cool interaction there. Damage Eater is another one that says, during your opponent's turn, when your opponent activates a card or effect that inflict damage, you can remove this card from play from your graveyard, aka banish. It's so outdated, it says remove from play, the old text. You can actually change that burn effect so it increases your life points by the same amount instead. So it's an anti-burn card if burn cards are ever good again. Brain Golem is one that says, effects of face-up light monsters are negated. If this card destroys a light monster by battle, it can attack again in a row. So it's anti-light monster that also has the stats of Summon Skull on a level 6 body, 2500. It's decently good. And then the last card is actually one that I discovered myself. It's a really troll one. I bet you guys have never seen this card in your life, but it's called Morph King STYGI-GEL. What this card does is it says, if this card is normal or special summoned, you can target one other face-up monster on the field. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck except for synchro monsters for the rest of the turn. Also, change this card's level to the level of the target, and if you do, gain life points equal to that target's level times 200. So this is really, really cool, because what that means is we're actually gaining life points in time. So if we target one of our own huge fusion monsters like the Guardian Chimera, which happens to be a level 9, then you get to gain 1800 life points in time, which is a huge differential for any burn-esque time card. And the fact that this can be resurrected off of Chimera very easily is definitely something that I think could actually see play in this deck for time. Now, this deck has a burn card / life gain. It's crazy. You do have to unfortunately pass turn to your opponent before resurrecting this bad boy, but it's just something that I discovered that was really, really neat. So I would definitely encourage you guys to play around with these cards. If I missed any cards, definitely let us know below. Are there any good cards that we can still send off of Baphomet that's not been mentioned in this video in terms of Illusion, Beast, or Fiend? Let us know in the video comments below. Other than that, we'll see you all in the next video. Bye bye. Thanks for tuning in.